The simplest way to speed up any process is to remove steps. More steps it is, the longer it's going to take. And this is what makes combat in pretty much every version of Shadowrun a slog. Ditto Exalted. There's a lot of steps and a lot of dice rolls made during each step. Let me illustrate using the rules of Shadowrun 4e. Let's say we have two characters on either side of a conflict. The players, Tokyo and Nova, and two clowny clown gangers. Every combat, of course, starts off with those familiar words. Roll for initiative. That is one dice pool per character involved. Once the GM has figured out what order everybody is going in, the action phases start. Everyone gets one free action, which typically doesn't involve dice rolls, two simple actions, or one complex action. So let's look for the longest possible string of actions, our worst case scenario as it were. This would be everybody involved taking two simple actions. Guns are out, everybody is taking shots at each other. Reasonable-ish. Using a semi-auto or burst fire weapon is a simple action, and it gives you some of the best return on your actions to take a careful shot or two at somebody. Plus, pistols are cheap. Every attack made comes with a chance for the target to avoid damage, and while range attack defense is pathetically low, I'd still personally like the off chance of not getting a bullet to the face. And further, if the defender does catch a bullet, which is likely, they still get a chance to roll their armor and body rating to see if they're just tough enough that it doesn't faze them. Thus, every character we add to this combat, assuming they don't get removed for some reason, will give us 6 dice rolls. 2 attacks, and each one consisting of up to 3 rolls. Improbable, but possible. And this is everything that would happen in one round of combat, including initiative, which if we assume X is the number of characters involved in the combat, each one will bring about 7 rolls per round. Initiative is rerolled every turn in Shadowrun. On the opposite end of the spectrum, which is also improbable but not impossible, only initiative is rolled. Viable reasons this might happen include somebody aborting to full defense out of an abundance of caution, or somebody not realizing that the Fichetti security is in fact a very good pistol, since its 30-round magazine minimizes your chances of getting caught with your gun going click click in the middle of a firefight. So basically, everybody nose down, avoiding bullets or feeding more into their gun. Shadowrun is more than just a game of guns, and while the infinitely stupid Tokyo would only know about point and shoot or maybe apply club to face if we're being generous about knowing things, Nova is a hacker, and the clowny clowns love their magic that they describe as party tricks. So we'll go for a slightly more mixed combat round as a likely scenario, a sort of middle ground. So Tokyo and one of the clowny clowns will stick to 2 simple actions of semi-auto fire. The clowny clown that uses magic will only get a complex action for spellcasting. Given how many new options this opens up though, it becomes really hard for me to predict how this will influence the equation. But keep in mind, all these new possible actions will also give anybody playing a mage more things to mull over. So, I don't know, have a rolled up newspaper handy for if they stupidly don't think about their actions before their turn comes up. 1 roll for spellcasting, 1 roll for reaction, 1 roll for drain. And last, we have Nova. Going into VR in the middle of a firefight is a bad idea, because even if she gets extra actions, she'll be a sitting duck. So AR it is. Much like with the Magic Clown, Nova gets new actions to consider. And since most of the Matrix actions in Shadowrun 4e were designed more with snatch files that aren't yours in mind, as opposed to make devices around you do things they shouldn't, there is a lot her player would have to go through if they're a novice. And a lot of things the GM would have to understand. But this is not what we're building an equation for. Without going into VR, she only has her 1 normal pass to work with. Luckily, most of what she'd use in this situation would be free actions that call for simple rolls and would likely only be done to figure out what nodes she can access. You know, looking for nodes that represent the comlinks of the clowns. From there, anything she'd do, like spoofing access and commands to their devices, would be complex actions. So she'll most likely be bringing 1 contested complex action to the table. Now, compiling this all together, I'm going to divide the equation by 4 since we're averaging out how many actions 4 characters involved would contribute. And putting my equations into a graph, we get this. The first graph I made for this was practically unreadable, but it really gets the point across. Each character involved in combat contributes a lot to the amount of dice pools rolled. Going rightwards, the x-axis, we have how many characters are making initiative passes. Upwards, the y-axis, is how many rolls are going to be made. And keeping the x and y-axis on the same scale leads to pretty much an unusable graph, since we can barely see anything. To actually make it usable, I had to change the scale of either axis, which makes it easier to functionally read, but makes it look like more characters or initiative passes isn't actually that bad. But pay close attention to the scale. Each block on the y-axis is about 10 times greater than those on the x-axis. This graph is usable, but doesn't immediately illustrate the point as well. Because keep in mind, the green line for this one is if every character involved only made 1 roll per round, effectively doing nothing but their initiative. The red line is a mix of many simple or a few complex actions, and blue is nothing but simple actions. So, as you go further right, which could also represent more initiative passes, you're making more dice rolls per turn. 4 people on the red line is 18 rolls. On the blue, it's 28. Bump it up just to 6 though, and you're looking at 27 rolls for red, mixed actions, and a wild 42 for nothing but simple actions. So, you get a second lesson here. More actions, yes, means more longer turns, especially when one turn has a lot of dice rolls. But also, the way graphs are used to represent data can be misleading. If you see a graph, take some time to really inspect it and look for some extra context to figure out what the numbers really mean.